Behind the Shades.
Hello, Kari. How are you doing today?
Well, and you?
I am well. It's a beautiful Sunday. The weather is warm, and I'm speaking to a kind lady about one of these hot topics, which is parenting. We all want to be one, but not everyone can be one, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I know we're going to speak about this, but before we do so, do me a favor. Introduce yourself, let people know who you are, where they can find you, and of course, a little bit about yourself, Kari.
My name is Kari Petruch, and I'm a master relationship coach, an author, and a public speaker. And I help couples to reignite their relationships when they find that things are kind of down and they want to have more joy and excitement in their relationships. That's what I do. Um, the name of my book is Get Out of the Box and Into Play, The Secret to a Lasting Relationship. And you can find that on Amazon. And if you want to know more or read my blog for lots of tips about parenting and relationships, you can go to highestintentcoach.com. I'm a mother of three and a grandmother of nine. So, and I love my kids and I love my grandchildren.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. A grandmother of nine. Wow. That's quite the accomplishment. One thing I like to mention about parents is that it's like a tree, right? So for
Mm.
example, Carrie, you be that tree and all these branches are like your offsprings, and then the branches of the branches are the offspring of your offspring. So grandmother of nine, how does that make you feel to know that 12 people total have a connection to you?
It's super fantastic. I really enjoyed being a parent, but being a grandparent is just incredible joy. You get to, all the discipline and all of those things that you need to do as a parent fall out the window and you get to just play and play and play with your grandchildren. It is a great joy. It truly is.
So it sounds like you're not the wicked witch of the West when it comes to your grandchildren.
Oh no, no. They all call me Mimi and I spoil them rotten. I just love and love and love on them.
I was raised by my grandmother. My grandmother's the most important person in my life, and I realized that the love that you have for like a grandparent is totally different than you have for your own parents. It's like
Hmm.
there it's just a different type of connection. It's hard to explain for me, but sometimes for those who don't know, is something like you feel like when you see your grandmother, your grandfather, you feel a different type of connection. Is that something that you believe to be true?
Oh, I do believe it's true because I think we're calmer by the time we're grandparents. We don't get so excited about, rules and things like that. I'll bring my grandkids in and I will enjoy making cookies with them, and I don't worry about the mess. When they leave and they go home, then I clean up the mess. It's just not just much more relaxed and realize that the time that I have with them has to be really quality time.
And I wonder how much of that is that you know that they're going home, right? Where
Oh,
it's like, I
yeah,
know after like 6 p.m., they're out of here. I don't have to worry about
yeah,
them ever more, right? Like it.
yeah. You do get a little more tired a little more quickly. Some people have a lot more energy, but I definitely do. When it's time for them to go home, it's time for them to go home. That's the
Johnny,
way.
Kimberly, grandma's tired. So can
Yes,
you take
yes.
them out of here a
You
little
need to go
bit?
home and sleep in your own bed and yeah, yeah, yeah.
So take us through the genesis of your journey when it comes to parenting. Is this something that you always envisioned for yourself when it came to having your own children?
I always envisioned being a mother. I mean, I always wanted to. Motherhood came to me quicker than I had planned. So I had a little boy, and then 15 months later, I had a little girl, and then 2.5 years later, I had another little boy. Those are my three children, and I was fairly young. I was 22 when I started having children. I hadn't planned on having them until 30, but well, they were here. So I didn't plan on a lot of things. Life happened, and I what I also didn't plan on is having two children who had some serious disabilities. So I have a daughter who is deaf, and I have a son who's hard of hearing and Asperger's. Um, and I remember praying to God when I was pregnant with each one of my children. It doesn't matter to me. Just make sure that they're here and that I can love them. And so um, I think I was well equipped to be a mother of children with special needs. So.
I think many parents would probably agree with you and say that they're equipped to be a parent, but they weren't necessarily prepared, meaning that there wasn't like a book or a manual that they can say that, okay, the child is here. Step 1, do this. Step 10, do this.
Well,
It's more like you're building it. It's like an airplane. You're building it as you fly, basically, right? But you had
oh,
to figure it
I
out yourself. So how did you figure it out?
Yeah, I'd had a really rough early childhood, really abusive early childhood, and I had no idea how to be a mom. So how I prepared myself for being a mother was I got scared when I was pregnant with my first child, really, really scared. And I thought, I don't want to repeat what happened to me as an early child, and I want to be the best mom that I can be. So I got every book that there was on parenting, and I read and read and read and read and read while I was pregnant with my first child. Um, everything that I could get my hands on. And back then, reading a book on the internet was not a possibility. I had to go to the library and get those books and read those books and return them. And um, my experience as a child wasn't a good one. So I wanted to make the experience for my children a better one. As parents, we can't completely erase our experience. If we've had a bad experience with our childhood, we can't completely erase it, but we can certainly take steps to um, change that.
I, I wonder how many people will be that transparent and that self-aware that their childhood was one that they don't want to repeat for their own children. Like, what happened in your life for you to realize that, hey, I'm pregnant, I don't want this for my child?
Yeah, just the fear of giving birth to a child and not knowing what to do. I didn't want to, I was hit and I was verbally abused, and I didn't want that for my children. I knew how I felt, and I was scared. How do I stop this? How do I, what happens if I get mad at my kid? Am I going to hit my kid? Am I going to yell at my kid? Am I going to call my kid names? And so I thought I needed to do whatever it took to stop that.
Was that easy for you to overcome and make sure that you weren't passing that on to your kids?
It took work to do that. I remember my first child was really needy. He would wake up every hour and a half for feedings, and I was pretty sure I was going to lose my mind because I wasn't getting sleep. I wasn't getting any rest at all, and I was by myself. My husband was active duty military, and he was gone all the time, so it pretty much fell on me to take care of my son. And I called the doctor one day and I said, "What do I do? My kid's crying and crying and crying, and I've held him. I've done all the things that you've told me, and all these books have taught me to do, and I'm so frustrated and I'm so angry." And I still remember what he said to me. And he said, "Kari, you are the best mother for your child." He said, "Be the best mother." He says, "Put the baby in the crib and walk away. Just walk away from the baby and count to 100, and then go back Your child is not going to die or disappear because you walked away from it for a little while. He said, but you need to get you straight so that you can be there to comfort your child. And it worked like a charm. It did. It worked like a charm.
The fear that you speak of, Kari, was that a fear that you didn't want to repeat what you went through as a child? Or was that a fear of more so that I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I have the best intentions of making it work?
I think both. I think I was terrified of my own anger, and not that I was rageful, but so much abuse had been done that I was afraid of my own anger. And I also had a lot of fear about, being the best that I could be. And I had a lot of fear early, that by the time the second child came, that fear started to go away. And I realized that it wasn't quite as hard as I was making it out to be when I was a new mother.
I grew up without my mother and my father, and for a lot of years, especially my early teens, seeing like these families and seeing how close they appeared to be, I
Mm.
felt disappointment, and I felt a lot of different types of emotions, and they stayed with me. And I think those emotions that were originated in my childhood, that put me in a situation that it delayed me wanting to have children, because as you mentioned, you
Mm.
become aware and thinking, what if I'm just like the experience that I had as a child? What if I give that to my children? I don't want to place it on them, because it's like you're passing down this trauma. And then as the children get older, they may pass it down as well. Was there ever a fear from you thinking that no matter what I did, maybe subconsciously I may pass down this type of trauma to my children that I experienced?
I think what I know today is very different than what I knew then. There's absolutely the fear that I was going to pass that trauma down to my children. I didn't understand, all of the lingo today back then. I didn't understand about trauma and how trauma is generational, and all of the information that we have today is completely different than when I was there. I mean, the book for raising your baby or taking care of your baby was Dr. Spock at the time. And what we know today as compared to what we know then is completely different. There was a fear that I would pass that trauma down. There was a fear that I was afraid, what if I hit my kids? I was afraid, what if I say things to them that's going to mark them for life? But my grandmother said to me, Kari, there are no perfect parents because there are no perfect children. You can only do the best you can do to undo what was done to the best of your ability. You can't completely be perfect. There is no perfect. And it relaxed me. It made me understand that I could only undo what I can undo, and it's my children's responsibility to undo what they can undo, and so on and so on.
When you look at your three children and then you look at your grandchildren, because
Mm.
we talked about that earlier, and you see the happiness, you see their success, especially as you mentioned, you have two with disabilities. One is
Mhm.
deaf, and the other one, and there's another that has Asperger's, right?
Mhm.
Asperger's. When you know that they're living fulfilled, happy lives,
Mm.
how do you feel when you look at them and say, I raised this, I helped raise that?
Well, I feel proud of the devotion that I gave to my children. I do, but I feel more proud of them because they're the ones that worked hard to become the adults that they've become. It was my responsibility to teach them right from wrong, and discipline and integrity, and work ethic and all of those things. Those were my responsibility as a parent, but it ultimately is their choice to do what they need to do to become the adults that they are. And they are all three very successful adults with their own true beautiful stories.
As you flash forward now, Kari, what's something that you look back on and say, I'm very proud of this moment in my parenting journey?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. So one thing that I am proud of in my parenting journey was teaching my children integrity. Your word is your bond. And, when I was growing up, I didn't have that. And so I'm really proud that I taught my children that more than anything, to be true in your word, to do what you say you're going to do, to follow through with what you say you're going to do. Um, and they do. And I'm really, really proud of that I instilled that in
Was that something that was important for you to have them appreciate as they got older? Because integrity, similar to consistency, is a very big aspect of adult life.
Yeah, well, I was a very consistent parent, that's for sure. But yeah, I think integrity is part of consistency. Doing what you say you're going to do, following through. Um, it's super important for kids and super important in your adult life and their adult life, my adult life.
So, for you being a grandmother and a
Mhm,
mother, you're wearing two different hats, as you mentioned, your wife as well. So, you're wearing three,
mhm,
but more importantly, there's a hat of Carrie, which is
mhm,
meaning that you were someone before you got married, you're someone before you had children, even though you had them at a younger age. Well, today's
mhm.
standards, people having kids at 14, so is it really young anymore?
Well,
But
yeah.
at that time, you were at a point in your life where you thought that you're going to have your kids later on, but you had them
Mhm,
early, earlier than you expected.
right.
So, did that kind of throw you for a loop where you're like, okay, my plans are being fast forwarded about 8 years? How did that feel?
Um, at first, I had a lot of trouble. I was in college at the time. I waited a couple of years before I went to college, and I was in college at the time, and I wasn't sure how I was going to manage college and kids, and I had to make some decisions about, were my wants and needs more important than the wants and needs of my children. I made a decision to stop going to college and to stay at home and take care of my kids. That was my decision. That's not a decision for everybody, but I felt like it was important to them to have a parent around. Like I said, my husband was active duty at the time and he was gone up to 9 months out of the year. So I felt very strongly that there needed to be a parent available to my children at all times. So I decided to stay home. So my plans and what I wanted to do with my life and that just got waylaid for a while. But eventually I did what I wanted to do anyway. So, um, you know, there is a Carrie, there is a mother. Although my mothering skills are today, I don't give advice to my children unless it's asked for. They're grown adults. They make their own decisions, and if they want my opinion, they ask me for it, and I freely give it if they ask. And my grandchildren, I get to play, play, play. So it's just a completely different thing today.
I feel sometimes we offer advice at the most inappropriate times, right? We may say that,
Mm,
hey, I did it this way, you should do it that way. But what
mm,
we should understand is that, Carrie, your parenting style works for you and your kids, but that same style
hmm.
may work for mine, but it may not work for someone else's. There's like
Absolutely.
a uniqueness to the parenting style when you are working with the people that you work with, when you have your book and you're presenting these types of
Hmm.
ideas. Is that something that you find that the people you deal with having difficulty understanding that, hey, parenting in many ways is unique to the parents as well as the child?
Mm. I don't have any trouble with that. I believe that every single parent, regardless of if you're dual parenting or single parenting, that every single one of them is completely unique. they're unique human beings, and their parenting styles are going to be completely unique. And what I do is I help people with relationships so that they understand that their relationships are unique, and what works for them and doesn't work for them is how we go. My job is to give tools and guidelines. It isn't to tell people what to do, but to help them to make their own decisions about what they want to do with their relationships.
What are some of the tools that you offer parents? And let's say, for example, new parents or potential parents that would help them along that journey?
For new parents and potential parents, some of the tools that I have a blog that's called Words of Wisdom, and it's for moms. Um, Certainly, it could be for dads who are at home with their children. Um, One of the tools that I totally recommend to new parents is that whatever time your baby gets up, it's important, yeah, that you as a parent get up an hour before that baby so that you have time to meditate and center and be ready for the day. I know it's really kind of tough sometimes, especially when you're waking up in the middle of the night, but it is key and essential for your baby, for you to be in the right state of mind so that you can be the best parent you can be. So that's one of the tools I offer my parents.
I know sleep is something that every parent, especially with newborns, would be like, Terrain,
Mhm.
if I get 3 hours of sleep, yes, I'm happy.
Right.
Right. And
There,
it seems that they take, especially when it's a newborn, right? They spend so much time with the child, hours and hours and hours. And
mhm,
I've always wanted to ask parents this, and maybe I'll ask you this.
mhm,
Um, those early days, first couple of years where you're so sleep deprived,
mhm.
right? Looking back, if you can get more sleep, or if you can figure out a way to get more sleep, would you? And how would you
Yeah,
do that?
yeah, I would. I didn't have permission. I didn't give myself permission, and I didn't have someone that told me. That one of the greatest things, and it happened by the time I got to my second child, someone told me this, and that was my responsibility to myself and to my baby to sleep when my baby sleeps, if at all possible. When a newborn is there, when they're sleeping, take a nap, even if it's a 30-minute snack nap. Sleep whenever you can get sleep. This rule about staying up all day, and I know there are working parents, I know there are, but when you come home, if that baby comes home from the child care, and you're working, and you bring the baby home from child care, when that baby goes to sleep at night, go to sleep. That is the most important thing you can do for you, is get sleep when you can get sleep. In that first 6 weeks of life, you're usually home, even if you're a working parent. Sleep when the baby sleeps, period. Whatever has to be done, laundry, dishes, all that stuff, that is not nearly as important as your sanity is. And getting sleep is absolutely key and essential to staying in the best you that you can be for your kids.
I'm going to share a secret with you, Kara. I don't have kids and I enjoy my naps. Let me tell
Yeah,
you,
good,
I'll take
good.
30 minutes, 45 minutes, probably in a couple of hours, I'm going to take a nap because it's such a beautiful way to like rejuvenate yourself,
Oh,
right?
yes, it definitely is. And I don't get naps during the week usually very often. Once in a while, I can catch a 20-minute I call them snack nap. And I can catch a 20-minute nap once in a while, but usually Sunday afternoons, I lay down and take a good 2-hour nap. I love to do that. And if the weather's right, I love to take the 2-hour nap outside.
What's something that you'd want to share maybe with the next generation of young adults who are trying to navigate their parenting journey? And as you mentioned, these days there's a lot of resources out there, but maybe help them
Mm,
kind of skim through the fat of the topic and get down
hmm
to something that is more advantageous to their journey.
I'd love to tell every parent there are a lot of experts. out there. There are a lot of people that want to tell you how to raise your child. One of the key and essential comments is, in whatever you do as a parent, be consistent. Changing your mind and changing what you're doing, and trying to go around and do what this one says and that one says and this one says, your child needs consistency. So whatever it is you do, be consistent. The other thing I want to tell you is, you are the expert on your child. Always. You are the expert. You know your child better than anyone in the world. And you know both internally and spiritually what is right for your kid. And remember that when people want to tell you that you're doing this or that or the, just remember, you are the expert on your child, and you know what's best for the
And before we close, Kari, there's one other thing I want to ask you from a grandmother's perspective,
child.
and that is, because I asked you about the parenting already. So what's one of the best things about being a grandmother, especially a grandmother of 9? What's one of the best things?
You get to play. You get to play. I get to play. I get to become a child again with my grandchildren. You know, the goofiest things. I got the littlest grandbabies are completely fascinated with potholders in my kitchen. You know, I'm not shooing them out on the kitchen. I'm sitting on the floor with them and letting them put the potholders on my hands. You know, you let go and you get to just be goofy with them, and that is one of the greatest things, is you get to kind of be a kid again and not worry so much about all of the discipline and making sure that everything is taken care of for them. You just get to play with them. That's the fun part.
I was going to say, it's like you're able to relive your youth and your childhood in a more beneficial way through your grandchildren. Is that what I'm getting?
Oh yeah, yeah. I can play squirt guns with them and not care if I get wet. I can go sit on the sidewalk and draw with sidewalk chalk if I want to. I can just play. Yeah. The benefit is that I get to play without the responsibility. They can get all dirty and all that stuff, and then I can send them home to their parents. They get to just play like another kid.